My name's John Britton, longtime Eastside resident. I own Audrey's Place on East 10th Street. I've grown up here on the Near East Side. Went to Minnie Hartman School 78, kindergarten through 8th grade, Howe High School. As a little kid, I felt like the area, it was just your typical East Side neighborhood, working class. Most of the people owned their own homes. There were a lot of businesses here on the East Side, RCA, Western Electric, Chrysler. Audrey's Place actually started as a really small, the one room over here. It was actually a retirement venture for my parents. I had managed electronic stores here in Indianapolis for a while and had left that. My dad talked me into coming along and helping him out, and that was like in 92, 93, I think it was. We never intended it for it to get as big as it is. We take up quite a bit of space here on East 10th Street, but business would leave and we would end up moving in. In the beginning it was just kind of for like self-preservation of the area and taking care of our surroundings, and we just slowly kind of expanded over the years to what it is now.
I'm Julie Crow.
And I'm Tim Harmon.
And our business is called Tim and Julie's and Other Fine Mess. We're located here on the southeast corner of 10th and Oxford.
I moved here in 1972 from Brownville. I graduated Brownville High School in 71 and putzed around. I ended up on East 10th Street. Honestly, it was like moving to the moon. It was very different from what I was used to. And it was fun and exciting and affordable. The Rivoli Theater was open back in those days, and people from all over the state would come and line up for a block outside the Rivoli Theater.
I too discovered it in the 70s when this was just all the antique stores in town were along here. The Rivoli was having film festivals of, Busby Berkeley musicals, and it's just, I don't know, there's nowhere else like 10th Street.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
My name is Chris Staub, and I moved into this neighborhood 30 years ago this week. Where I had been living, we were kind of involved in drugs, and I just began to start feeling very unsafe. I knew I was going to have to change my lifestyle, and this house ended up being my lifestyle change. And I came here basically to make a change for myself, and then ended up falling in love with the community and then hoping to make a change there. I had an elderly couple next door to me. I had elderly lady behind me, but then scattered along the street were families of 5 and 6 children at a time. They literally would be, from the time school let out, would be running up and down the middle of the street and playing and laughing. And
mid-70s, 80s, it started, slowly declining. More of the properties became rentals. People were moving out of the neighborhood. Factories were leaving. So the neighborhood kind of hit a low point. A lot of the businesses that were here then had slowly, moved on.
My name is Valerie Davis, and I've lived on the Near East Side for about 15 years. I was homeless, and I got dropped off over here on the East Side. I didn't know anything about this side of town. My dad dropped me off. My mom didn't want to deal with it. She just said I had to go. I wish I had known what was really wrong before. I didn't know. Subsequently found out it was, postpartum triggered chronic depression and anxiety issues. But back then it was just crazy. They just called me crazy, so. When I first moved over here, I lived at 10th and Rural in the Mozingo. And I didn't grow up in this mess. When I describe it, I describe that as living in New York City. It was like lights on, hollering, sirens, prostitutes, fights, needles, drug paraphernalia. It was just like, I never seen nothing like that in my life.
So we're in the 900 block of North Oakland. Just down the street was a house that had been carved up into multiple rooms that were all then there for rent. The crime in the neighborhood really rose dramatically when that house opened up. We started seeing a lot of homicides, and it turned out that every time the news media showed up was the only time that I was talking to my neighbors. After the 5th or 6th homicide, it just got to the point where this is a very lousy way to meet my neighbors. We started a neighborhood association.
I will do that. Thank you. And as always, if you guys ever have any questions of me, I'm really easy to get a hold of.
We also built a pocket park, which is one street over. And literally, the whole dynamics of everything changed because now we're involved with keeping Annapolis beautiful. We're building playgrounds. We're doing cleanups in the community.
We started our business like 8 years ago, maybe 7, where we take buildings apart and we sell the pieces. So doors, windows, bathtubs, light fixtures, all kinds of hardware, everything from about 1950s through 1840s, all native to Indiana. Julie and I were looking for a building for our new store. And I said, you know, there's this building on 10th Street. Let's just go by and look at it. And they told us a price. And I think we made an appointment and we offered to buy it the next day.
We did. I mean, I tell people it was like this building sold for about the price of a mid-sized car. We bought it in October of 2011. And it took us almost a year to get it so we could start bringing people in. Sometimes I say there must be some kind of geological vortex under the intersection of 10th and Rural, because it really attracts people here, and there's a kind of an energy here that I've grown accustomed to. When we first had the building and there wasn't a lot of other stuff going on, and I'd be in here working and I'd be by myself, I'd just sit and I'd just look out the window. I mean, and it was just so interesting to see the interactions on the street. And at first, you know, I thought, am I going to be comfortable here with the kind of foot traffic there is, you know, standing by the door handling money? And, you know, I quickly realized that that was really not a problem. The people here that you see a lot on the street are just living their lives. And, you know, our store is part of the scenery, part of the neighborhood.
The way I got here was I went to the Bonner Center every day, and I just wore them out. I said, I need some help. The head of the Bonner Center, I went to his office, well, before the new building, he had a cubicle. And I would just sit in front of his cubicle every morning. Good morning, Mr. Taylor. I do know this. The average person probably would have said, the hell with this, I'm moving on, or go another route. I don't know, but I knew because I had worked all my life. If you start down here and you don't get an answer, you go up the chain of command and you something. But I went to the top, and he listened. He listened. I promise you, that man looked at me and listened. And after I got through, he said, okay, this is what we're gonna do. I grew up that you better not knock on my door, ask me for nothing, don't, you know, people didn't interact. So when I came over here, it was like people talk to you and people, how you doing, Miss Valerie, you know, and part of my process of, well, you can't never overcome depression, but to be involved was to start going to meetings and start being involved in the community. People are very organized over here. And they love their community and their neighborhoods. The neighborhoods mean something, so I love that. If you say anything about them, if they have an issue, right or wrong, pro or con, they coming out, okay?
My name is Charles Lovelady Sr. We're in Chuck's Coney Island. I'm the owner of Chuck's Coney Island Restaurant and Classic Cut Barbershop. My brother-in-law moved to Indianapolis, and I had a clothing store in Michigan, in Detroit. And he used to always tell me, like, you need to bring Detroit fashion to Indianapolis. So that's what kind of landed me on 10th Street. But when I first came here, you know, everybody, when I opened up the clothing store, people told me it wouldn't work because of it's on 10th Street. And, you know, I did not know nothing about, you know, the areas, what they say, which was good or bad, or however it may be, but it worked out perfect. It's just so many different types of people, attitudes, personalities. It's just like you see all walks of life in this neighborhood, honestly. In 2013, I decided to open up the barbershop. This space right here was just empty for a long period of time. And I used to just watch people go, you know, the bus stop right across the street, you know what I'm saying? And so people used to stand out there in wintertime, it's cold. I see them stand out there waiting on the bus, or however it may be. You know, they're not really allowed to stand in the speedway and just stand there, however it may be. So I was sitting there thinking like, well, if I could open up a small place with coffee and, you know, something like donuts or something, just finger food real fast, however it may be. A lot of customers that come to the barbershop from Detroit. And I used to ask, like, what you miss about home? And they were like, as soon as I go home, I go to Coney Island. I go to Coney Island. I go to Coney Island. Go to Coney Island. So I asked my son, which is my business partner, Charles Jr., I said, want to try to open up a Coney Island? He was like, I don't know about that. At first, he was like, you know, let's try it. Order up. As far as the employees, they are from the neighborhood. Everyone stays probably no more than 10, 15 minutes away from here.
You know, we have about 12 employees on average and, you know, hope to be here for a long time. I would love to see more businesses in the neighborhood that were giving back to the community, creating jobs for some of the people that live here. Not just minimum wage jobs, but, you know, some decent paying jobs where they could earn a living wage. I'd just like to see a lot of these boarded up houses and businesses just become useful again.
Hi, Mike Gomez. We're at 2827 East 10th Street. Hopefully soon the future location of our second spot for Gomez Barbecue. Boarded up buildings never look good. And I just really hope that they all start coming undone and we have lots of fun out here. I'm looking for fun. I wanted a new location within our first year. Like, I wanted to have more control of our space. City Market right now is a great lunch spot. It does have some nightlife depending on what's going on downtown. And if it's promoted right, we do get a good crowd sometimes. But I wanted something that's more of my own place instead of shared. My buddy Chris, he used to have Love Handle next door. So he moved to Mass Ave, which is great. But what we do, we need to be in more of a neighborhood, I think. And that's what we want. We want to have a neighborhood like, hey, we're going to Gomez's down the street.
It's been really a fun ride, and I have met so many neighbors that I never would have met had I not gotten off of my butt and gotten out and talked to them. I like seeing the smiles on my neighbors' faces, meeting new people, and seeing when I've helped somebody and they come back and tell me how much difference that has made just because of either a conversation or pointing out a resource that was needed. To me, that's the whole gambit of why I do this.
Being in the neighborhood for how long as I have been, I've been blessed to be over here this long and doing business in a neighborhood that they said was condemned, or however you want to say it, doomed, or, you know, is no good. I was able to make a living for my family in this neighborhood. I'm blessed for that. I'm happy for that. People seeing all the new development coming around and everything. And, you know, I have talks with conversation with all walks of life, and some people worry like, oh, we might be having to move or however it may be, but it's a lot of things like near the Bonner Center, doing a lot of things where people are, you live in this neighborhood, you locked in this neighborhood. You only move if you want to move.
I feel really grateful to be able to do something that I enjoy so much. And part of it is because we were able to locate here and buy a building on 10th Street.
Yeah, I would encourage people to come to 10th Street and make their own stories, you know, and move to our neighborhood, shop in our neighborhood.
When I did get stable where I could afford housing, Like I said, I own this. This is a mortgage. I'm paying for this. I could have went anywhere. I could have went and left all these troubles behind, all these sad faces, but I was like, this is who embraced me. This is, sometimes I tell people, you can't pick and choose your family, but this, I think the Near East Side is my family. You know, they have totally embraced me when my blood family was like, non-existent for reasons unknown. And I tell people, I'm thankful I lost everything and became homeless for one reason, because it made me have a focus in life. I think this was my purpose, to be involved, to think about community.